the feedback they got was, we should probably have the client.
Let's go ahead and get started. I'll call to order this meeting of the Facilities Committee, and I'm going to immediately turn it over to Steve Jackson. I'm not sure if the whole committee is aware, he's the 1892 building liaison. So he's been more involved with this particular project than I have, and he can introduce tonight's program.
Thank you, Joe. Before we get started, just thanks to Cal for a lot of support, unplanned support, I'm pretty sure, in helping the UW team with the project. So thanks, Cal. Just real quickly, nearly 2 years ago, the 1892 High School Coalition formed to assist the Stoughton Area School District and community to identify reuse opportunities for the school, the former school, and identify a pathway to begin possible preservation efforts. Peggy Varigan, a member of the coalition and Stoughton Landmarks Commission, connected the district with Dr. Charles Qualiana. He's a professor in the College of Engineering at UW-Madison on the possibility of using the 1892 high school for his senior level capstone design course. The district agreed that the collaboration was a great opportunity and initiated the project earlier this summer. So the UW team, Heritage Consultants, is here tonight to present their work, and Professor Qualiana, you can do the introductions.
Very good, thank you. I'm Charlie Qualiana. I'm a preservation architect from Madison. I'm also a professor of practice with the UW College of Engineering and Civil Engineering. The students who are going to present to you tonight are in our senior level capstone design course. That's a 16-week course where they do a very hands-on project, very similar to yours, of course. And I really wanted to thank the Stoughton Area School District for partnering with us this semester on this project. It's been a really good experience for our students. I think they've learned a lot and got some real hands-on experience. I think our charge really was to look at this as an old building, of course. So an old container, if you will, that needs a new use. And our job was essentially to get that container ready for a new use. And that's what the students are going to talk to you tonight about. Again, I'd like to thank the school district for partnering with us. Hopefully it's a win-win situation. Our students get a lot out of it from an educational perspective. The school district hopefully gets some ideas on what it's going to take to rehab the school at some point. And we also get to involve some industry professionals. We have architect Sarah Skalitsky, who's worked with us all semester as a mentor, and Abby Perchmore, a structural engineer, who's worked with us also all semester. So I want to thank them. And I also want to thank Peggy Varigan from Stoughton here, who's kind of instigating and got us together with Steve to get this project going. So with that, Liz, it's yours.
Okay, thank you.
Can I turn down the lights right now?
Yes, please. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, we're going to be presenting our design for the adaptive reuse of the Stoughton 1892 high school. This high school was built in 1892, and on December 3rd, 2001, it was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. And the school served thousands of students as first a high school and then a junior high school until it was converted to administrative offices in the 1980s. And now it is currently just used for storage. And there's a desire to, like Steve said, repurpose it for community use. So tonight, first we'll be discussing the existing conditions of the high school and some design constraints. And then we'll briefly go over our preliminary design options that led us to our final design option that we're going to be going more in depth into tonight with the design, the cost, and the schedule. I am Liz Rubenzer. I'm from Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, and I'm the project manager.
My name is Andrew Rexrow. I'm from Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, and I'm the architectural lead for the project.
I'm Stefan Donica. I'm from Moldova. I work with hydrologic and transportation analysis of the site.
I'm Stephanie Suberes. I'm from Panama, and I'm the construction lead for this project.
I'm Alex Buckman. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I'll be focusing on the structural analysis for the existing building and the design of the new addition.
And I'm Ryan Machuda. I'm from Verona, Wisconsin, and I will be the geotechnical analyst for this project. So as it stands right now, the building is around 13,000 square feet. It's around 125 years old, which is left in a very deteriorated state. in a near uninhabitable condition. So as it is used right now, it is only used for storage, as you can see in the right-hand picture. So upon our first site visit, one thing that was immediately apparent to us was the exposed framing throughout the building, as you can see in the right-hand picture. Another thing we noticed was the electrical system, which is in quite disarray. As you can see in the top left-hand picture, there were loose wires hanging down from the ceiling, and so that will need to be organized. So the stormwater management system will need an overhaul as well, as upon our third site visit, it was raining upon our arrival. And in that bottom left-hand picture, you can see you can actually see water coming down from that staircase, which led to flooding of 2 of the rooms in the basement. So in our design, we've incorporated a solution for that. So the third floor and attic space is uninsulated and needs some serious work before it can be in a livable condition. So Heritage Consultants has recommended that it just be used for mechanical space instead. So some design constraints that we have faced on this project is, number one, preserving that historical integrity of the building, such as those arched entryways upon entering, the original hardwood floors, and the main staircase in the building. We also want to incorporate an elevator, as well as a second staircase and an ADA ramp to bring the building up to code. And this has been a problem because we have faced a lack of space within the building. So some project needs is we're going to need to repair those damaged architectural features I talked about a little bit earlier. The mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems will all need a complete system overhaul. Or we need to seal up that building envelope to prevent any future flooding in the basement of the building. We're going to need to incorporate an elevator and accessibility ramp, as well as make some structural modifications to meet the standard codes. We will also need to add some additional parking. And with that, I'll pass it on to Andrew to talk about some design solutions.
So before we get into too many of the details of the final design, I'd just like to take a couple moments to talk about some of the design options that were presented during the preliminary design phase. And to meet the adaptive use needs of the Stoughton Area School District, we proposed 2 different sets of alternative designs. 3 different design alternatives for the building itself, and then 3 different site design alternatives. So really within the building design alternatives, we wanted to provide for a variety of uses. A multi-function space was really one of our goals. We also wanted to limit the amount of structural modifications that would be needed with any sort of adaptive reuse plan. And of course, we also wanted to make sure that we preserved the heritage and the certain architectural features of the building within any options that we proposed. On the other hand, in terms of the site design alternatives, we really wanted to make sure that we maintain the vehicular flow around the building itself with North Forest Street and the north-south access here. We also wanted to increase the parking on the site, and we really wanted to make sure that whatever design we had would adequately handle all storm water in case of an event. So specifically with the buildings, kind of the base option or the selective option that was proposed really sought to minimize the overall building remodeling costs by only including really the necessary work that would be needed. The overall footprint of the 1892 high school would stay the same and would incorporate an elevator as well as a staircase inside of that original footprint. Sort of middle of the road option or the intermediate option really had the goal of performing a complete remodel of all building spaces, also with the addition of an elevator shaft and stairwell on the north side of the building, so the footprint of the building would then change a little bit. And the third design option that we had was more of a comprehensive option that would incorporate a much larger addition to the east side of the building, all while respecting the existing Romanesque Revival architecture of the 1892 high school. So, and I should mention that these 3 design options were discussed on the posters that you saw when you came in, and the posters really have a lot more details associated with these preliminary designs than what we're talking about up here. So ultimately, it was that comprehensive design that was developed by our team throughout the fall semester here. So the existing square footage of 1892 high school was 13,000. The addition on the east side would add another 5,000 square feet, bringing the total square footage to 18,000 square feet. If we take a look at some of the elevations here, we can kind of analyze a little bit the overall design and particularly some of the architectural details that we looked into when designing this addition. In the south elevation here, we really looked to the certain standards and guidelines that were set forth by the National Park Service and the Secretary of Interior, which stated that really that any addition to a historic building such as the 1892 high school would have to be similar but yet differentiated in a way from the existing structure. So one way that we did that here was with the brickwork in particular. You can see that there are similar earthen tones, but yet the texture of the brick on the addition, in particular on the elevator shaft, and the material is a little bit different from that of the existing high school. Also, kind of the most distinguishable piece of the addition would be the elevator shaft again, with some lettering on it that is really separated from the existing high school itself with sort of a neutral barrier in the two-story atrium that we have that would be made out of glass and metal. So getting into some of the floor plans here, we can kind of see the two entryways here, the existing as well as the one on the east side for the addition, connected through the corridor in the gray. And then again, just to kind of meet the goals of the project, we wanted this high school to be able to serve a variety of purposes, or this building to serve a variety of purposes. So you'll see in yellow the multi-purpose spaces, which would take up 1,300 square feet of this first floor. And then it was also expressed to us that there is a great interest for more space for a Fab Lab within the school district. So we also really wanted to purposely incorporate that in the southeast corner in that sort of blue there. That would be an additional 725 square feet that could also be brought down into the basement as well. And then going into the second floor, similar way in that we have kind of the entry areas off of the main staircase from the existing structure as well as in the east side entryway, connected through a corridor. Again, multi-purpose spaces here on the second floor totaling about 1,700 square feet with access to a kitchen so we can provide for any sort of banquet events that might go on in the larger room on the north side, as well as a storage area in orange for any chairs and tables that might be used in those spaces, as well as just some room for offices in the southeast corner as well. And then just to help you visualize this a little bit more, we have some section cuts of the 3D model. And here we have the first floor again with the addition on the east side here, connected through into the existing building with the corridor, large multi-purpose spaces throughout the first floor, and of course ADA compliant restrooms. As far as the second floor, again, the addition, the east addition, as well as the existing building connected with an L-shaped corridor and large multi-purpose spaces with the kitchen, restrooms, and office space. So after going through some of these architectural details, I'll turn it over to Alex, who's going to talk a little bit more about the overall structure associated with the building.
Thank you, Andrew. So with any adaptive reuse project, it's likely that there'll be structural changes or modifications to the building, as it's likely that the use or purpose of the building will change, or we'll need to bring it up to codes and standards used in design today. So while we're conducting some of our preliminary site visits during our preliminary design phase, we noticed some unknown conditions with the existing building. Things such as beam dimensions. When we were taking some measurements, we noticed that the depth of the beams varied greatly. For your typical 2x12, some of them were 11.75 inches to 11.5 or 11.25. This is most likely due to the shrinkage of the joist over its service life. So these are things that affected our structural analysis on the building, as well as the material type used during the original construction of the building back in the 1890s. Since we were unsure, we didn't have any existing drawings for this building, we were unsure of the actual materials used. This is another thing that will affect our structural analysis. During our preliminary design phase, we noticed many areas of, the building where some of the current didn't satisfy current codes and standards used in design today. Things such as the allowable bending stress, which is pretty much how much load the joists can carry per their cross-sectional area, or deflections of the beam were too great based on current standards. So I pulled this load table out of ASCE 7, which is the American Society of Civil Engineers. So this is for if we wanted to repurpose the building for, let's say, a classroom, we need to make sure satisfy 40 pounds per square foot of live load, or if we wanted to repurpose the building for a computer lab in a certain room, it needs to satisfy 100 pounds per square foot of live load. There are also, during our preliminary design phase, certain areas of the building where there are unknown structural conditions. Because of this, we wanted to further investigate the building and cut some holes in your floor. Before we were able to do this, we had to have asbestos testing done by environmental managing consultants to clear the building for these cuts. Once this was done, we were able to cut the floor and identify some critical areas for our structural analysis. So two locations we were interested in was the southeastern corner of the first floor, as well as the northern room on the second floor. And these are rooms where we'd be introducing higher loads due to some of the changes in our final design, such as the introduction that Andrew talked about of the Fab Lab or computer lab on the first floor that different members of the community or students could use, as well as the multi-purpose space on the second floor, we're interested in some kind of banquet hall for the community to use as well. So because these rooms require higher live loads for a structural analysis, some modifications were in order. So one of our recommendations that are backed up by some of our calculations and drawings that will be provided on a table in the back there is sistering on joist structural composite lumber on either side of the existing members. For the computer lab, we would recommend sistering on 2 beams to either side to increase its capacity for some of these things like deflection that I talked about earlier. And as well as the second floor, we'd only recommend sistering on 1 joist. This would require minimal construction. It might be tough to see this detail down here, but just kind of gluing on with an adhesive and having a bolted connection to the existing member. So we have a little bit more flexibility with the design of our addition because it's all new construction and we're not constrained to the amount of space for our design as well as some of these unknown conditions. So for this design, our goals are providing the lightest, most affordable cross-sections that can support some of the new construction. This will be supporting an elevator shaft that you can see here on the left side. The laser pointer shows up, as well as the stairwell here. That's all part of our ADA accessibility. The framing will also be supporting a concrete slab on metal deck, which we sized up using some of the different codes and standards used in design today, which will all have different floor finishes. So with all this in mind for the structural analysis and design, I'll now turn it over to Stefan to talk a little bit about the site.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, so if you take a step back from the building and look at the site overall, this is the current building location. And then the proposed addition is just to the east of it. The gray shaded area is the proposed modification to the site. I wanted you to keep in mind, I'll refer to this as an elbow in a second here. And when I say an elbow, that's what I mean, this kink in the road. If we take a look at the proposed modifications, one of the changes that jumps out right away is the closing the access to this parking lot, which would provide us a few extra parking spaces, as well as minimize the non-residential traffic to the north Forest Street. This change would lead us to make this little road into a 2-way traffic, because currently it's a 1-way. This would allow for an easier in and out flow of the parking lot. Another major change is the straightening out this elbow, which is what I just said a minute ago. This would allow for the buses to line up right behind the high school, which is what they currently are doing, and also would make the flow of the site to flow with the proposed design in a more natural way. The pavement of where the buses are lining up will be a different pattern as well. This will match the pattern of the pedestrian pathways. That's because we want to discourage the cars as they're leaving the site. We want to discourage them to exit that way, so to take the north street instead. All these changes, the result will fall into keeping all the everyday cars into this loop on the north street, minimize the traffic on the North Forest Street. The only commercial traffic should be there when the trucks pick up the dumpsters or when the buses are leaving the site, and also provide a few extra parking spaces. A final touch to the site is incorporating some pedestrian pathways that connects the North Forest with the north to the building. This will give a more welcoming feel to the pedestrians on both of these streets. Another thing is what we incorporated with this pathways is the ADA ramp that Andrew was talking about, which is leading into which is connecting to the addition's entrance. This is another view. This is another view of the pathway that I was just talking a minute ago that connects to the North Street. And as you can see here, between the city sidewalk and the parking lot, there will be room for a bioswale, which leads us into talking a little bit about the hydrologic aspects of the site. As Ryan mentioned, the drainage of the site is an issue that has to be addressed regardless of how much work ends up being done to the site. And this will be done using a stormwater management with these bioswales that they should be able to handle a 100-year, 60-minute storm event. 100-year meaning that this type of storm would likely to happen once in 100 years and would last about an hour. The data for this precipitation was pulled from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association website. So these bioswales were sized to be able to handle this type of storm. The way the water would be directed to the bioswales would be to regrade the parking lot for the water naturally to flow in them, since we're making modifications to it anyways. Another grading should be done around the building itself, because as we saw what's happening in the basement, it may be very well because of the settlement of the building due to its age, and not just because the downspouts are pouring straight into the foundation. Final touch that was added to the site was this little fountain with a small rain garden around. This is not supposed to handle a ton of water, but still some of it, just because it's so close to the building, we don't want any water to potentially infiltrate into the basement. And these are some major aspects of the site. I will wrap up with this here, and I'll hand it to Stephanie to talk a little bit about the fun part, the probable cost.
Thanks, Stefan. Okay, so for this section, we'll go over the cost for each design component to better understand how we came up with our final cost estimate. So for the interior renovation, we allotted about $2 million. This includes the 5,000 square feet East Addition, as well as a curtain wall system, which accounts for about 70% of the exterior area of the addition. This also includes the new elevator, as well as the new enclosed concrete staircase inside the addition. This also includes new flooring, new ceilings, as well as new insulation, drywall, and paint. Next, for the exterior cost, these are about $60,000. This includes patchwork to the exterior facade, as well as new downspouts throughout the perimeter of the building, and new windows as well. For the site, we have about $200,000. This includes resurfacing the entire parking lot, as well as adding parking capacity with about 20 new stalls, each of 180 square feet. This also includes cost for resurfacing the sidewalks throughout the perimeter of the building and the new walkway that cuts through the middle of the site. We also have a cost for the stormwater management system, as well as any erosion control costs as well. Now for mechanical systems, we have about $1.25 million. This includes demoing the existing MEP systems inside the existing building, and as well as new mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection system throughout the existing and the new addition. Next, we have a 10% Heritage Consultants design fee, and we have a contingency fee that we decided to divide into two parts, where the 5% is for any concealed conditions, and these are for any unforeseen costs that may occur. As Ryan mentioned earlier during the presentation today, the third floor attic space is in a very bad shape, and we are uncertain about the extent of the water damage as well as the dye rot damage, and we've allotted for that. Next, we have 15% contingency fee, which is just general construction costs, any owner changes and such. So this comes to a total of $4.57 million with a plus or minus $500,000 range. Next, for life cycle costs, we have about $51,000 per year. This accounts for yearly crack filling as well as routine seal coating where needed. And this is estimated to be 10% of the parking lot. And this will begin after the second year of resurfacing the parking lot. Next, we have building maintenance and operations costs, which are included for both the existing and the new addition. And last, we have hydrological maintenance, which was estimated to be 5% of the initial construction cost. And with that, I'll pass it on to Liz to wrap up and talk a little bit about the schedule.
Okay, so just briefly before wrapping up, this schedule was for our project purposes, so keep in mind that it doesn't reflect any actual construction that will be taking place. But since the building is on the National Register of Historic Places, we first need to get approval for the design, and then after that, there would be approximately 2 months for bidding and acquiring permits, and then construction would start with selective removal of the interior of the existing building and laying the foundation for the addition, and then concurrently doing the interior of the existing and addition at the same time, followed by approximately a month of commissioning to make sure all the systems in the building work. So that's all we have for you tonight, and with that, we will take any questions. Yeah.
First off, I have to ask, if I read correct, you're all students at the university?
Yes.
I think we're very fortunate, lucky to have you take Parsons with us.
Thank you.
And I think your future employers are very lucky to hire you. What I've seen tonight, I'm very impressed with. I myself live in the South School of Stoughton, so I live in a historic school building here in town. I'm one of the town owners. I'm very impressed, and I just start off with that.
Thank you. Way in the back.
Me?
Nope, behind you, and then you. Yeah.
Did you talk about the roof? I let's kind of shake that other side did come in late, but it looked like the exterior was what that cost to do looked like it might have included a roof. I'm wondering about the shape of the roof.
So about the shape of the roof, I know from the interior, when we went up in that third floor attic space, there are some holes that would probably be required to keep patching to help insulate the building. But in terms of exterior,
Yes, it doesn't include the roof cost.
Okay, now.
Yeah, I recall that you had 3 options that you worked on in your design phase. Why did you select this option over others?
I guess we ultimately selected this option, I mean, partly because it was kind of the boldest option that we had proposed or brainstormed. And I think that's really part of what this whole project is about, is kind of bringing people back into the building and wanting them to use the space. So we felt kind of this bold plan with the larger addition providing a lot more space for the community was really what was best out of the 3 options that we had proposed. Yeah, as well as, I mean, the additional accessibility requirements that it would meet as well.
Your initial thought was the Fab Lab in the building. Is that an additional space the high school will keep what they have now, and this would be moving there, and adding additional space over here to be bringing closer to the middle school kids?
Yeah.
Take part in?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I guess we would work with the school district a little bit more too, just to iron those out. But the idea was that we would keep the existing spaces that already had throughout the school district, and this would supplement that in a way. And I guess we recognize that maybe 725 square feet for Fab Lab might not be sufficient. They might need more than that. And there is also room in the basement of the existing 1892 high school that we could expand that into as well, if need be.
Yep.
Did you develop any cost estimates for the intermediate or the selective options?
Yes, we did. Initially, the intermediate was about, we adjusted our cost at the end for the final. The intermediate was around 6 million, and then the comprehensive was about 8 million, and then the selective was closer to 2 to 3 million. But with more of our analysis and better cost estimates and coming more to a site and making our own measurements, and with our Revit model, 3D model, we were able to do a much more informative cost estimate.
I can add up to that. We have a matrix that we run by and then if you're interested in that, we can send it to you later. That kind of shows every step, why did we make each decision based on the public interest, based on cost and all that, life cycle cost. And if you want, we can get your contacts and send you the matrix and take a look.
And actually, if you want to see the final report on the table to your left, there's a cost matrix that goes per each design component, and it goes through everything that it accounts for square footage and cost for that quantity, and then for the final.
Yeah, but that's all just for our final design. We didn't go that in depth with our prior options.
I noticed that the addition is mostly for the elevator and the steps. So the question is, why do you need so much footage for those two things? Or two, if you have that much, is there a possibility to utilize it for more? For example, second floor, something like that.
Yeah, so with the second floor, I guess, I don't know, it might be helpful if we can go back to that plan if possible, but. Well, really just with the main multi-purpose room that is on the north side, that would be, the east addition would really kind of be an overflow space for that room if need be, where, I mean, people could be, in the room on the north side here, or if possible, you could kind of flow out into more of this atria space for different dining events or food events that might be had out there that you wouldn't want inside of the large room itself too. So it's really more of an overflow space as well, but it could be used for other purposes too.
Having been in the building, I know that even with that current diagram on the screen, there's a lot of interior, smaller rooms that were used for who knows what decades ago. Are those rooms bearing walls, and can they be expanded to make a room larger?
Can you repeat that? I know in terms of our design, I made sure that all the bearing walls remained in place so that nothing is obviously changed, because that would require a lot more adaptive reuse, or adaptive, much more construction or design. So can you repeat again what you...
Yeah, just the concept of whether some of those interior small cubbyhole rooms are weight-bearing enough that that the walls cannot be removed, versus saying that they're flexible and some of those walls can be knocked down to make the larger 3 rooms bigger or more useful for other purposes?
Yeah, so some of those, I don't know if you have a laser pointer, but some of these in here that look a little bit cramped up, that these right here aren't load-bearing walls, so they could be knocked down to open up the space there. So some of the main load-bearing walls are, seems kind of bad, but like, oh, you can't see it for there. But some of the mains are this guy right here and going along in this direction. So many of these walls would be able to be knocked down to expose more room for various activities or purposes of it.
I guess continuing in that same subject matter here, I'm looking at the L-shaped hallway, and why those interior rooms, like bathrooms there, are kind of moved against the outside wall and shorten that hallway up. It looks like a lot of wasted space for people walking down a hallway.
Yeah, so you're talking about the corridor, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I guess really the idea behind this is that because we have 2 different entryways or 2 different spaces to go up into the second floor, we really wanted to try to channel all of the people into one area so that there's not 2 different main entries into the largest multi-purpose space in the building. So if people are coming up from this east entry, they would kind of be guided around this L-shaped to more of the main entry area that used to be in the existing building, and then funneled up through here. I guess the door on the outside would really be something that would be used only for emergency purposes if people need to escape in the case of a fire or something, down this exit here, the stairway here, as well as out to the other side.
So channeling them toward the alcove instead of that entry doesn't serve the same purpose?
Are you saying move the bathrooms up against this wall?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Oh, okay.
And south. And then you got the hallway there from the entry over to the other entry. It still connects. It's just less hallway.
Right. Yeah. a part of the corridor design as well is we really wanted to make use of the window space and the natural light too. We didn't really want to board up those window spaces with bathrooms or other storage areas, so that was kind of another use for the corridor.
Yeah, the windows are.
The real question I think I had is more for the school board than anything, I guess, and that's really, so this building then would remain useful for the school district. It would be owned and still maintained by the school district, correct?
Feel better.
This is all
hypothetical.
Yeah, this is, ideally, probably where the location is, if this building is going to be preserved, it probably needs to be owned by the school district, because of how close it is to our middle school and everything else. And so, one of the, I think, I wouldn't call it constraints, but some of the things that we have to take into account is what is the use and is it appropriate that close to the middle school? And so more than likely, the school district would retain ownership of this building. I can't see the district selling this building in its location, in its prime location, and having an independent, because then you lose control of that area. So some of it is then, if this is something we go forward with, the school board talking about uses for it. There are some things that have been being brainstormed, but nothing that is kind of been firmed or nothing that has really had a major discussion by the school board yet. But I would think that the district would have to maintain control and ownership of this building.
So then you're saying there hasn't been a space needs study done yet? You kind of got the cart before the horse.
Right now, we're in the process of, we will be doing this next semester, kind of a comprehensive study of all our buildings and all of our spaces, and looking at what the life expectancy of all our spaces are. But right now, if you ask me, you know, point blank as far as whether we need it for K-12 education in our current state, no. But that's not to mean that there couldn't be some multi-use options available with the district and the community coming together to use this space. But those conversations haven't taken place yet.
I have a few questions. First of all, did you run across any safety issues within the building that you would be concerned about, either now or during construction?
Well, lead and asbestos were two things. We had some asbestos testing done before we can make those cuts for the structural analysis. I think there was something with asbestos in the wall panels or something so there is an issue with something with that there, so further work on that. Maybe we didn't have any lead testing done, but that would be something before any construction on the building. You need to test for that in the paint and the ceiling, things like that.
Would you anticipate the contingency would cover those costs of removal? Or do you think that there could be an additional cost for those items?
Yeah, well, mostly that 5% was allotted for that as well as the third floor attic space. That is very non-habitable, but it's very hard to see up there what because the extent of the damage.
Okay.
We expect that to cover it.
Some of the other questions I had is when you're talking about the elbow and increasing parking spaces, is there a number of spaces that you came up with?
Yeah, it's anywhere between 20 and 30, depending on the how many ADA accessible parking spots we want.
Okay.
That would decrease the number of spaces.
Okay, thank you, because I know that's been a concern of the district that the current parking lot is pretty maxed out during school hours anyway. Could a project like this, you mentioned starting with the interior, could this be phased in Because obviously, you know, there's a funding mechanism that may need to occur. Some of it may be grants or those types of things. How would you see that happening if we would have the option of doing this in phases?
You could start the interior remodel of the existing building before adding the addition to the side.
And how about the parking lot?
If you did go with this building design option, the site design needs to happen at least concurrently with the addition, because the addition takes up more space than is currently there. So you would have to you'd have to get rid of that elbow to put this addition in.
Okay. And then my last question would be, is there anything that we should be doing to the building between now and whenever this may occur in order to preserve the integrity of the building as it sits?
I guess just make sure that bottom stairwell is sealed up so no water can infiltrate. I think we've talked about that.
Doing anything, maybe kind of seeing if you could get the areas outside the building to slope away from the building instead of towards it, to help the water move away from the building, not into the foundation.
We also noticed on one of our site visits when it was raining that most of the downspouts on the exterior of it were actually, instead of funneling into the channels to go away from the building, it was actually pouring straight into like cracks in the exterior wall, and we saw that was flowing into the basement as well. So maybe some small repairs to the exterior of the building might help with that issue.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you over there.
I have a 43-year history with the district. My office was in that building for 14 years as Director of Transportation, so I'm very familiar with the building, very fond of the building. Currently, we do not have an enrollment need for the building, but there are, with us being in the Madison metropolitan area and seeing how other districts are growing, very likely at some point in time there will be many more homes put up, and River Bluff would have a need for this building. So I mean, it's the type of thing to see this as very possibly having an educational purpose. And also, periodically you hear of interest in charter schools. And if there would be a possibility of a district-owned and controlled charter-type school, this would be the perfect location. I mean, yes, parking is on the tight side, but we do not know what can be happening in the next 10 or 20 years as far as the adjacent properties, that some of those properties may eventually be available for purchase by the district for parking purposes. I mean, these are older properties. This is not where we have properties that are of extreme value because of the historic nature of the houses. And so therefore, there is possibilities of expansion to the side. So this building could very easily have for a charter school or the expansion of the River Bluff property. So keeping that in mind, I mean, I would want to be that whatever we do, that we preserve this building for future strategic use.
Yes, and not only, when we were designing it, we weren't only thinking about school or uses for the school, but also community members, so like after school hours, things like that. So even if they didn't have a huge need for more space for the school district, it could be used by the community too.
Was all the water coming in through the foundation now? Is that where it's all coming in?
That's what we saw, but it might be coming from other spots because we didn't really dig around there.
Is there any thought about fixing the foundation and digging down around the outside?
Yeah, the idea is that the building might be
since it's this hole, it might be settled a little bit, so the grading around it might be funneling towards the building instead of away from it. That could be part of it. And also, the downspouts were not funneling away from the building, they were pouring straight into the foundation.
There's cracks in the wall, I have no idea what.
Yeah, the water finds its way eventually, even if there is no cracks.
You would have to maybe say yes. Is there enough space to put in geothermal?
We did not look into that.
Yeah.
Rip it up the parking lot.
That's a whole, other story of the design. We didn't touch on that.
Well, all the other rates had asked about the roof, and I think you had made some comments about there possibly being some holes in the roof right now. Would that be part of the process to try to stop any further damage before we think about moving forward? The grading around it, and then is that roof a problem right now?
Well, during our site visits, we didn't have access to the roof. And
Well, the holes is, when we went up the third floor, we looked around for a bit. I don't think it was any major damages or repairs, but we just noted, oh, look, you can see some light coming through there, but, so we don't know the extent of how serious it is.
And here in Wisconsin, when we want to stop damage on an old barn, I think the first thing we go after is cap the roof to keep anything from underneath getting damaged. So I think we need to probably think about.
Tim, the roof is what, 15?
I don't know, Cal, you know how old the roof is?
2004.
So it should have some life left. I mean, it might need a patch here and there.
Yes,
It's
it's
not,
not architectural style shingle, so.
yeah, they should go, what, 25?
25 to 30.
Yeah, the light that was coming through, what we saw was where the steeple was. It was not really anywhere else. It was just where the old steeple was. So that.
If your thoughts were to maintain the Romanesque architecture style of building, and the addition would be the way to go, how do you rationalize adding a very modern-looking glass and metal onto that older architecture?
Yeah, I mean, it's,
You blend the bricks in, and I understand the
Right.
ideas of trying natural light, but it looks like it's sort of just bolted onto the building.
right, yeah, and that's definitely one of the challenges of this project is really making sure that that new addition is really integrated into the building. I mean, again, yeah, you brought it up too with the bricks. I mean, that would be one way of doing it. In order to come up with the design, we kind of studied or did a case study with a different building just off of the square in Madison, and they had kind of a similar approach to adding an addition. They had an elevator and stairwell. So that's really where we look to really try to kind of match the materials, the colors, the textures, those types of features. And then really we wanted kind of the neutral break to do all that it could to separate it a little bit. And then also just kind of looking at the horizontal lines of the building, connecting up where old windows or elevation lines used to be, maybe the roof, bringing those lines over to the addition is really kind of how we tried to match that as well. There are definitely more things that we can do and look into doing with that, but those are some of the ways that we've at least tried to match it so far, or make it compatible anyway.
Do you remember the name of the bank?
It's the American Exchange Bank, just off of the square in Madison.
I think you're missing an opportunity to utilize the archway.
Okay, yeah. Set the table here.
did you have a plan where the elevator was incorporated in the building of the addition?
Yeah, that was more of a selective design option that we had within the preliminary design. I think ultimately one of the reasons why we didn't go with that is just because we really wanted to maximize the space of the existing structure itself. We didn't really want to take away from that in any way because, of course, staircases can be quite large if we're going to integrate another staircase or elevator shafts as well as all of the equipment. And we really felt that needed to be something that could be incorporated outside of the building to make the most use of the interior of the historic structure.
Are the elevators here? Where is the elevator?
Yes, so you'd have an elevator kind of in the northeast corner here, And then the other stairwell would be more on the west side of the building. In that design option, anyway, if we were to put it all inside of the original footprint.
But you could also add an elevator without doing such a large addition.
That's true.
Yeah.
Mhm. But again, just the space in between where that elevator and stairwell would be, thought would be just a great way to add another ADA accessible entrance and to provide for more of an overflow space or other uses inside of the building itself, just to expand it out a little bit more.
But that addition wouldn't have to be so large either, would it?
It wouldn't have to be.
Or you could, like you said, you could incorporate more archways.
That's what we felt was the best option for the school district in terms of their space needs.
That's also possible to make it smaller.
As far as precedent in town, your option of adding that glass atrium and then the staircase up the side looks a lot like what was done in the library in town. If you have the building, you know that's the historical part, here's the part that makes it usable. And keeping, like you said, it's distinguishing, we're saving this, and this is making it functional now, and it's being honest in its reuse.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it could be something we look into, but not necessarily. That's not something that we want to do with that addition.
For your new addition and upgrading, are you using the most sustainable materials? Was that input, the LED lighting, the things that would save, the school district money, or how are you putting in those kind of sustainability, whether or not it's LEED certified or not, aspects into your building design?
Right. Yeah, that'd be something that, I mean, we didn't talk about it a whole lot here, but that's definitely something that would be incorporated with this addition on the east side. Reusing certain materials when we can, as well as meeting certain LEED requirements, whether it be, silver or gold, any one of those, as well as with the updating of the mechanical systems as well that really use a lot of that energy. We would look to update those systems so that they're running more efficiently and serving the space as they need to.
Overall, you did a sustainability, if I recall from the presentation you did on campus, there was a sustainability component of the overall evaluation criteria, is that correct?
We kept that in mind as we went on with the design. As you mentioned, that making use of the natural light or with the LED lighting and so on, but it was not an in-depth analysis.
Okay. Thanks. Maybe if there's one more question and then we'll wrap it up.
So I know you guys are wrapping up, I just wanted to say thank you. You guys did an amazing job. I loved your concept of going bold. I think it's really fun to think of the potential. You did a great job interpreting the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation with that modern addition. It's awesome. So I just want to say thank you very much, and I think you guys did a really great job. Thank you.
Yeah, the committee needs a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thanks for coming, everyone.